Okay? Sa mga oras na to, ang atin namang pag-aaralan or i-discuss ay ang quadratic inequality. Ano nga ba ang quadratic inequality? A quadratic inequality is mathematical statement that relates a quadratic expression as either less than or greater than the another. Okay? Para mas maintindihan, let's have our example. Example number 1. 3x squared minus 6x minus 2 is not a quadratic inequality because there is no inequality symbol indicated. What are the different inequality symbol? Of course, it involves the greater than or the less than symbol. Number 2, we'll have x squared minus 2x minus 5 equals 0. This is also not a quadratic inequality because the symbol used is an equal sign. And if it is an equal sign and we have the highest exponent of 2, this is a quadratic equation. Next, example number 3, we'll have x squared minus 2x minus 8 is greater than or equal to 0. This is a quadratic inequality because the symbol used is an inequality symbol which is greater than or equal to. This is an inequality symbol and the highest exponent is 2. That is why it is called a quadratic inequality. A quadratic inequality in one variable is an inequality that contains polynomial whose highest exponent is 2. The general forms are the following, where a, b, and c are real numbers with a is greater than 0 and a should not be equal to 0. You also know why, you already know rather, that why should a not be equal to 0? Because when a is equal to 0, then it is considered a linear form. So, what are the different forms of quadratic inequality? First, we have ax squared plus bx plus c is greater than 0. We'll have ax squared plus bx plus c is less than 0. Ax squared plus bx plus c is greater than or equal to 0. And lastly, ax squared plus bx plus c is less than 0. So how do we solve for quadratic inequality? In solving quadratic inequality, we need to find its solution set. When we say solution set, there are plenty of values of x or of the variable. Unlike with the quadratic equation, there is only a maximum of 2 values for x. This time, there would be more than 2. The solution set of a quadratic inequality can be written as a set or it can be illustrated through a number line. So with that, let us have our first or our example. X is greater than negative 1 is not a quadratic inequality but a linear inequality. And we can use linear inequality or we can use the illustration of linear inequality in solving quadratic inequality. So let's proceed. X is greater than negative 1 can be illustrated through the number line. Okay? You now have seen the point negative 1 here, right? All you have to do is to plot the point. Negative 1 is what we call the critical point. And plot the point on top of negative 1 and proceed an arrow to the right side of the equation. Ibig sabihin, all numbers greater than 1 are the value of x. So 1 would be 0. If you will substitute 0 to this, 0 is greater than negative 1. That is true because 0 is really greater than negative 1. Next, and all numbers on the right side of negative 1 are all greater than negative 1. Therefore, all numbers found on the right side of B, -1, is considered a solution of x is greater than -1. Let's try x is less than -1. Draw the number line again, locate the -1, which is here, and plot the point. So since we use this less than, you will plot a point and draw an arrow that proceeds to the left, because all number less than -1 is less than -1, or all numbers found on the left side of -1 is less than -1. This arrow here pertains that it reaches to -infinity. And we'll have x is greater than or equal to 1. Draw the number line, locate +1, which is this one, and draw an arrow that proceeds to the right. And lastly, we'll have x is less than or equal to -2. Draw the number line again and locate the critical point, which is -2. Then draw an arrow that proceeds to the left. So this is how we illustrate a linear inequality, which can be useful in solving quadratic inequality. Let's apply what we have learned from this slide on the next example. So as you can notice, I know you have noticed from the previous slide that we make use of an open and solid circle. This should be solid. When to use the hollow circle or an open circle in a quadratic inequality? You will use an open circle if the symbol uses the less than and the greater than. Meaning to say, if the hollow circle is used, the critical point is not part of the solution. And you will use a solid circle if the inequality symbol used is greater than or equal to and less than or equal to. So, meaning to say, when we are using solid circle, the critical point is part of the solution. To further elaborate your understanding on quadratic inequality, let's have this example. Find the solution set of the quadratic inequality below. We'll have x squared minus x minus 6 is less than or equal to 0. Change it first to a quadratic equation. So therefore, we can find the critical point. This quadratic equation is factorable, and it can be factored out as x minus 3 times the quantity x plus 2 equal to 0. Okay? Use the ZPP, x minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. Then transpose -3, x is equals to 3, and x is equals to -2. These are now your critical points of the quadratic inequality x squared minus x minus 6 is less than or equal to 0. Now, let's go back to this point. When do you think a number would be less than 0? Okay, a number is less than 0 if it is negative. Meaning, if we're going to look for the value of x here and x here, the value must be negative. One would be negative and the other one would be positive. Why? Because when you multiply a negative and a positive number, the answer would be negative, and that is less than 0. So ngayon, i-consider natin yung x is greater than 3. Because x greater than 3 will give you positive. These are from the critical points, ha? And we're going to use x is less than or equal to -2. Bakit? Kasi, pag less than, negative. If you will multiply positive, negative, the answer is negative, which is less than 0. Okay, let's plot this 2 into the number line. So, since there are too many numbers to be written, I only showed you the critical points here. You can do this to make it easier. Okay, we'll have x is greater than 3. We'll have the solid, we'll use the solid dot, meaning 3 is included in the solution and going to the right. And next, we're going to use x is less than negative 2 going to the left. Plot or use the solid circle, then draw an arrow that goes to the left. Another example would be x could be less than 3 also. This is a trial and error. When we say x is less than 3, which is a negative number, and x is greater than negative 2, which is positive number, the negative times positive is negative, which is also less than or equal to 0. Again, let's use this 2 to plot on the number line and to illustrate them. This is the illustration of the solution set. The critical points are negative 2 and 3. Make sure that when you place the the critical points rather, they are properly arranged based on the number line. You cannot place 3 here or negative 2 here because it does not follow the number line. So you must begin on the left side with the smaller number and on the right side with a bigger number. Okay, let's proceed with x is less than negative 3. X is less than or equal to negative 3. Use the solid circle since we use less than or equal to, then that goes to the right. And then we'll have x is greater than or equal to negative 2, solid circle that goes to the left, to the right rather. Now, which of these two illustration makes a solution set for x squared minus x minus 6 is equal to 0 or less than or equal to 0? You will know the illustration with the solution set based on the lines or based on the solution that has an overlapping line. Do we have an overlapping line here? None. In this case, we have an overlapping line in this illustration it overlaps on this part. So meaning to say, the solution set is between this one, between negative 2 and positive 3. If you will take one value of or one number between negative 2 and 3, it is negative 1, 0, 1, 2. You can use any number to substitute in x here, and you'll notice that it will make the solution true or correct. So therefore, if you will write the solution set as a set, the solution set is x is, how do we read this? X is greater than negative 2 but less than positive 3. This is how finding the solution set of quadratic inequality works. Okay, this is how we'll end the lesson. I hope you learned something from this, and I hope you will apply what you have learned from this in your activities and learning tasks. See you again next time. Enjoy. God bless.